What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Goddess Z, and I'm here with another episode of Holistic and Spiritual AF podcast. And I hope everybody has been taking care of themselves, mind, body, and spirit, because that's what it's all about. If either one of those things are out of balance, then we are out of balance, and we want to be aligned and spiritually integrated. And that's a big reason why I have this podcast with the guests that I have on here. And we talk about things such as metaphysics, holistic wellness, healing, energy healing, ancestral wisdom, healing generational trauma, just anything that has to do with keeping that mind, body, spirit integration. And of course, I have guests on the show as well. So if you're new to this podcast, welcome, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that follow. If you're following me on a podcast, this podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere that you find podcasts. We are syndicated too. So be sure to follow us if you're into those types of topics. And of course, if you're coming back, welcome, welcome back, fam. I always appreciate having you listening and dropping your comments and questions and things like that. It really does make this exciting. And it also fills my heart because that was a big part of my purpose is to make sure that I'm spreading the word out, pretty far and casting the net wide. Okay. So thank you so much. And I appreciate each and every one of you. All right. Well, first and foremost, got to get that business out of the way before we jump into my amazing, amazing guest today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her in just a second. But you can find me on social media all over Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Substack. I have writings over there, Medium as well. My blogs and my newsletters and really their story styles are over there as well at holistic and spiritual AF. That's and spelled out. And of course, you can Google me at this point. Okay. So you guys can Google me and you can find me at holistic and spiritual AF. Okay. So let's see what else is going on. Something new that's happening in this new 9 year. Happy fiscal new year to everybody. Of course, we all know that the real new year starts in springtime in March, March the 21st, and that's when things are renewed. But right now, we're going with the flow of things. And this is our new 2025, which is a 9 year of transformation. So there's a lot of things that are transforming on the planet, as well as I'm being called to present more of my spiritual gifts. So something that I've been doing recently is having live guided meditations on TikTok and YouTube. So if you're into that kind of thing, we go really deep into this meditation. It's usually about an hour long. So if you can't do the whole thing, I get it. If you can, that's great. If you want to work on it and practice and build up to that, I have those recorded on YouTube. Though they're live, but the recordings are still there, so you can check them out over there. And our first class of the year is going to be the Reclaim Your Roots, Connect with Your Ancestors class, and that's going to be Wednesday, January the 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That information can be found on Eventbrite, and of course, I'll have all that information down in the description, as well as the information for today's guest. All right, so enough about me and the podcast, and let me tell you about today's guest. Today's guest name is Tam Dillon. She is the creator of the Yogic Tarot. Okay. She's a spiritual guide and a yogi, and she's also the visionary behind the Yogic Tarot. She's got more than 25 years of experience in yoga, and spiritual practices spanning from Western and Eastern African traditions. Okay. She offers a unique perspective on these modalities and intersect and how they intersect and enrich our spiritual lives. Okay. She shares about her spiritual journey, her self discovery, and the profound lessons learned from different spiritual philosophies. And that inspiration has led to the creation of the Yogic Tarot. Okay, so she's got a lot of experience. I really enjoy talking to her and kind of getting her perspective of some of the same things that I'm into and some of the same things that I've learned and finding out the similarities. And I think you guys really enjoy her as well. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Right. So thank you so much, Tam, for agreeing to join me on this podcast. I reached out to you because I saw that you were doing some really cool things in the spiritual community. You were doing a lot of work, offering a lot of services to help, raise the consciousness of humanity. And so I was like, yeah, I want her on my podcast. So I'm excited to have you here, and thank you so much for agreeing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. I've already like introduced you, and so everybody knows how awesome and amazing you are. But you're into a lot of really important, deeper aspects of spirituality, things like yoga, shamanism, spiritual practices and philosophy, and of course tarot. And you actually do a form of tarot that was very interesting to me, the yogic tarot. So just kind of walk us through the journey as to how you got started on this journey, what your experience has been um, with yourself, as well as how you've been able to help other people with this.
Well, my journey would have started back when I was 7. I didn't realize my journey was starting then, though, being a little 7-year-old. We only have so much understanding of the world around us. But from age 7, I got to essentially look beyond the veil. So in spirituality, when we're dealing with people like psychics and mediums and healers, they have a term called the veil. And essentially, when they're doing their work, they're stepping behind that veil. So that veils kind of the separation between physical world that we all live in, and then the spiritual realm where ancestors, your spirit guides, they all live behind that
Yes.
veil. So I really started getting a proper interest in spirituality and different practices probably at around age 15. I was a heck of a curious teenager. Like everything just like made me curious about that stuff. My brother was also very um, key in all of that for me. We would chat about different things that he had read or researched. To come and chat to me about shamanism, different forms of alternative healing. And then he then gave me my first set of tarot cards. And well, my life hasn't been the same since. They
Yep.
have just been this incredibly magical tool that has just supported me along my journey through life. I've worked with it predominantly in my own personal capacity. But from about my early 20s, I started using it professionally and I began as a tarot reader. And as I learned and understood the cards more, their uses, the benefits of working with the cards and different ways to work with the cards, so the way that I would read for people has shifted and changed over the years. So I went from being your traditional ask me a question, I'll give you an answer type reader to someone who's now working with the tool for self-development reasons or to
Mm.
gain deeper insights into who you are, what is your purpose. Let's connect you with your ancestors. Let's chat to your spirit guides. So my readings as a whole became a whole lot deeper. From there, I then integrated different modalities like energy healing, crystal therapy, and then I retired because
Mhm.
that work is hard. That work is incredibly hard. I'd been doing it for close to 20 years already. And I was so burnt out with working with people one on one. And with a lot of the repeated stuff that I was seeing within that line of work, people misunderstanding what these modalities are for, how these modalities work, how tarot works, what tarot is for, how it should be used, how it shouldn't be used. And that's when I kind of pivoted towards a more educational role where I'd rather
Mhm.
teach people how do these things work, how to use these things for yourself. Because when we're doing that work for ourselves, there's a far deeper sense of empowerment to that work. You know, we can have our guides and we can have our readers, and they can only give you so much. When
Right.
you're really deep diving that stuff for yourself, the impacts are just tenfold. And I know that from personal experience. I mean, I've worked with so many different healers and readers for my own personal work. And
Right.
every time I've dived with that stuff for myself, that impact was always way bigger. And
Yeah.
my role is more of an educational role, more of like a mental coaching role. I don't work like hands on, like you can't come and sit with me and have a tarot reading now. But if you sat with me in a coaching session, I may pull the cards out for reference purposes and say, um, at the moment you're going through what seems to be a very tower card moment in your life, lots of transformation, lots of upheavals. Let's work with this card to understand your experience better and how you can navigate that experience better. So it's kind of taking the tools and the skills that I've gotten, leveling them up one more from there. Uh, Back in 2021, I did my yoga teacher training. Um, and as we were unpacking the philosophy of the Yoga Sutras, I just couldn't help but note this huge intersect between what tarot had shown me and what I was now being taught in the philosophies. And then the poses, as we were working through the poses, I was like, wow, this pose really reminds me of this card and it really ties in with this philosophy. And by June of that year, I said to the lead instructor, I was like, I have to create this yogic tarot system. Like, I have to do it. They just fit together so perfectly. And that's essentially where the birth of the yogic tarot system that I've created is actually stemmed from.
Awesome. Yeah. And you know what? I love your journey. You started out really early. You had the seeker spirit. It opens up something inside of us once we begin our journey, and then we start to experience it. And that's why I love asking people that, because when you can hear the experience, you hear the journey. And I love how you talked about the tarot like you were doing it for yourself. I think that's the best place to start, because you start to understand your deck, you start to understand the communication styles of your spirit guides, your ancestors. You're learning throughout the journey. And then it helps you to be able to help other people, where you all as a team can kind of assist and gather information from the other person. I also love how you talked about how your tarot readings deepened into like more of a spiritual consultation type style, where you were receiving all types of messages for the person that went deeper. And then I also like how you talked about the burnout, because the burnout is real, when you're
Oh,
doing
yes.
spiritual work and you are working with a multitude of different energies. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes people don't understand the depth and the work that's required. So they're coming and they're asking these low kind of level questions, and it keeps you down in
Mm-hmm.
this low vibrational plane. And it can be draining, when you have a higher calling. So, I mean, I love hearing your experience on that, because it sounds like you've gone and walked through the path. And I'm pretty similar to you. Like you like the educational style and showing people how they can actually implement this in their life. And I'm the same way with that, because these tools are accessible for everybody. And if you really truly want to have that experience, you've got to do the work. It's not an intellectual assignment. You have to go through your own walk and journey with your spirit guides and ancestors, and then you're going to open up things within inside of yourself, and everybody kind of goes down their path. And I love it. And so you talked about all of that and your experience, and from that you were able to create the yogic tarot system of your own. Because and I love it. And you have to go to the journey to kind of know, you could have never known that at 7 or at 15. And so that's really cool. I love it. So something else, like how did you find any issues along your journey with like the consistency of it? Because I know a lot of times people will start the path and then stop. And I've been on and off the wagon in the beginning plenty of times, So how did you find consistency an issue with you, and how were you able to implement that consistency for your own practice?
Real life gets in the way.
Hmm.
The that 3D world constantly steps in and it's like you gotta pay your bills and you got a job to do. And yeah, I was often on my path often, especially in the earlier years. And with working with a lot of my students and my coaching clients, that's something they all raise with me. They say, how do I maintain consistency on this path? And that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And from personal experiences, conversations with the ancestors, I think the where that issue of consistency comes from is that our communities aren't the way that they were 10,000 years ago when you had a village of people, everybody had their role, and you had a medicine person.
Hmm.
And that medicine person was trained by the prior medicine person. So you
Hmm.
now have these medicine people that are still being born, but there's no predecessor to show
That's
you
right.
the path, to maintain consistency in the path. So essentially, what we're lacking is a form of discipline in our path.
Yes.
And also because that path is hard. That path,
Hmm.
it's hard and it's heavy. The amount of work that goes into doing a path like that when you have such a deep calling, the average person, I don't know if they'd be able to wrap their head around just how hard that path can be, unless it's a path you've actually physically walked yourself. Um,
Yes.
I mean, the ancestors will challenge you in the most obscure ways, and you don't even know that you're being challenged. You're just like,
Right.
why is life just falling apart around my ears? Like, what is happening right now? And then eventually your intuitive side will kick in and they'll start to talk to you, and the ancestors will become a bit clearer, and they're like, well, we just got you back in school again for some training. Don't you mind? It's just another
Yep.
initiation stage. And you're like, can we find better means to do this?
Yeah.
can we have a university we can enroll in, like take
Hmm.
classes? And that's because the communication from the spirit realm is so bizarre sometimes. Sometimes it's completely direct where they're just like, this is what you need to know and this is what you're doing. And other times the messages are just so obscure that you're just like, what are you saying right now? Like, I
Yep.
don't get you. So trying to comprehend this, the information that comes through, learning how to communicate with that realm, and also communicating with yourself on that level and trusting those communications. Like I said, our biggest downfall is not having that predecessor to validate the experiences, to validate that
Mm.
path, and to teach us the type of discipline that we need for that path. And that's where these spiritual practices have come to my aid in things like yoga, meditation, mindfulness, tarots, that they've helped me develop a form of discipline. It's given me a path to maintain discipline on that ties in with the type of work that I do.
That's awesome. And that was said perfectly. The discipline. And that's the part that you have to learn. We don't have that in the world that we live in, like innately instilled in us. We're just kind of coming and going. Nobody's really going with the flow. You don't have time to pause and meditate. But those actual practices are the things that teach us the discipline. And I love how you talked about the fact that, because we've been pulled away from our original structure of community, that we don't have that predecessor, that medicine woman or man that has come before us in our lineage to teach us, and we're not seeing this all over the place. So for me, I found that it has to come from my ancestors. It had to come from my ancestors and spirit guides. They were those teachers for me. And sometimes that creates that doubt with inside of yourself on the path. Like, wait a minute, like, is this right? Who can I confirm this with? And to me, it's all about that building of the intuition, your own spiritual gifts in order for you to trust and know. And it's such a beautiful experience. And like you said, it's a path that has to be walked before you can teach other people, because these are the questions that's going to be coming up for people. They're like, hey, I'm experiencing this. What if I'm not doing it right? And really, I think it's important to have, those of us on the path teaching things like the basics, like this
Mm-hmm.
is how you meditate. When you meditate, what experience did you have? You have divination tools, which one speaks to you the most, because everybody is going to be pulled to something different. So definitely, I love that. That's the best way to say it. Discipline, we need that. And then, of course, the tools help us to stay disciplined. Okay, so you talked about your yogic tarot. I'd like to know a little bit more about your shamanistic experience and how you incorporate that, how that came about for you. Did you go abroad to learn it, or was it like another ancestral kind of thing?
That was all ancestral training, and wow, confusion, so much confusion. Um, from experiencing different bouts of what I understand to be shaman sickness. So shaman sickness can manifest in physical forms where you're just completely ill. You have no idea why. Doctors can't tell you what's wrong with you. You just know that something in the body's not correct. You then also have shaman sickness that can present as things like severe depression, mental diseases. So all of these things are there as a form, from what I understand, they're almost like initiation challenges. If you can overcome this dis-ease that we've given you, you're now moving into the next stage because you now know how to deal with this. You know how to heal this in yourself. You can now go forth and heal others because you now understand how it all works. And it's hard again, that lack of a predecessor, that kind of
Hmm.
like formal training, if you will, makes it so much more challenging. It's like, am I doing this right? Like you said, you ask those kind of questions, and you have like a big issue with something like imposter syndrome, where it's like, am I really having this experience? Like,
Yeah.
am I really having these conversations with the ancestors? Am I having all these bizarre spiritual awakenings? Um, I mean, I've had experiences that if I spoke to the average person about, they would probably think I was insane. But speak to
Hmm.
someone who's walked that path and they're like, yeah, I've had one of those too. So that lack of predecessor to confirm these things for you is a tough one in that regard. And also there's no real space for that kind of stuff in the modern world. Majority of the modern world will look at things like shamanism and shamanistic experiences as, that's all madness. That you're quack, you're crazy, that stuff doesn't exist. It's only within your um more defined cultures. So I'm originally from South Africa, so I come from a country where we have a mix of different cultures, but a lot of those cultures are still true to their traditions. And there I've grown up with quite an advantage. So South Africa is westernized, but we still have a lot of traditions going on. Here in
Right.
America, and a lot of that Western world, we're completely disconnected from that. I've seen a massive disconnect between normal real life people and their spiritual aspects. And because we have that disconnect, the Western world has even less space for that kind of stuff. You know, they're like shamanism. Nah,
Right.
you've been drinking that funny tea in the forest, haven't you? You know that a lot of people don't understand what shamanism is. And shamanism is it's not about reaching different levels. You know, there is no level of master shaman because there's constantly going to be new ways to evolve and grow yourself. Um, but the Western world just doesn't understand that terminology, that realm is just so foreign to them. Um, I think a big part of that is that disconnect between spirituality, but also that disconnect between them and nature.
Yes.
Most of your shamanic practices, they incorporate an aspect of nature. For me, especially within the last year and a half, nature has become this impeccable teacher to me, you know, where I'll sit and I'll observe the trees and how the trees are
Mm.
growing. You know, and I notice these trees that are bending over, and that understanding of those trees have bent themselves forward. So, because if they didn't bend, they would have broken. So, in
Right.
life, sometimes we need to bend, or otherwise we're going to break. So, learning a way of a shamanic path isn't just going and getting a formal education in shamanistic practices. It's sitting and it's watching the world around you and observing how it all works and how it all fits together. And then some deep, profound conversations with the ancestral realm because they've been here longer than I have. They've
Yes.
walked the earth for thousands of years. They know the ways, they know how nature works, and they know how that all integrates and how to use those things for medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you talked about that because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, well, you can't do that because you didn't go to Peru," and it's like you it's not that complicated, guys. It's all within inside of you. And I like how you talked about nature because nature is another spiritual realm that is ancient.
Yeah.
We're talking about earth energies that stores informations for hundreds of thousands of years. And if we connect with it, we have access to it. And I always say our ancestors are the first line of defense in everything. So when you go on this path, it's connecting with them first. They're going to keep you safe. They're going to guide you in a way that's easy to understand for you, in a way that you're ready to understand and receive the information. And so that you're absolutely on point with that. And then shamanistic practices is basically a way of life. All of these things become a way of life where you're consciously in tune with nature and the way that things are happening, your dreams, everything's connected. And I think you go on the journey as deep as you're ready to go. So I think a lot of times people have so much fear,
Mm.
particularly over here in the Western world, because, that hasn't been front and center until now, as we're experiencing this mass awakening around the planet. And so people are like, they feel like they got to go get a certification, they got to go buy something. And it's like, you could just go to the park.
Yeah.
You could just sit quiet for 5 minutes. And that's something that I'm trying to teach in some of my classes is let's stop overcomplicating it. Let's stop making it something that's accessible to some people and not other people. And as you described, you're coming from a different part of the world and the practices over there and the roots of the culture are very prominent. And over here, we have to work a little bit harder to get back to that and stop making everything, I think, 3D capitalistic. Oh, you got to buy that in order for you to get it. And, healing is accessible to everybody. And that's something that I always like to teach and practice. And so thank you for that. Thank you very much. Let me see. Let's see. Can you share an experience where some shamanic healing has maybe revealed something unexpected for you or one of your clients?
Gosh. Back when I was in Hanoi, Vietnam, oddly, my journey to get to Hanoi, Vietnam, was a bizarre in and of itself. Um, I was in a very unhealthy relationship, and the ancestors kept pushing and saying, like, you need to leave, you need to leave. And I was like, no, but where do I go? And like, how do I go? And they then sent me a very good friend of mine who said, he's going to go and teach English in Vietnam. The pay is pretty good and the lifestyle's great. So the ancestors were like, that's it. That is how you're going to be shifting yourself out of this relationship and moving forward to where it is that you need to go. And the most bizarre thing is that at the time, I didn't have the funds to just pack up my life and move to another country. So I was like, okay, well, you're all crazy, but I'm going to trust you because something in my gut said, yes, this is 100% correct. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. All I could see was just pictures of Vietnam. That was where I had to go. And the entire experience of ending that relationship and getting myself to Vietnam was so quick and without any issue. And anytime like a bit of a challenge would throw itself up where they're like testing my faith, I'd be like, nah, this is right. I can
Yep.
see it. I know this is where I'm going, and I did it. Um in and amongst all of the kind of the questions of, should I leave this partnership and this where I'm supposed to go? I was doing a random Google search and this image kind of throws up and all it says is goodbye and it's got the name of my ex right there. So I'm like, okay, cool, ancestors, I hear you loud and clear. Like, I have no choice but to trust you on this. And I landed up in this country on the other side of the world. First time leaving my home country. The funds, the exact amount I needed was given to me. Again, without any hassles or hurdles. It was just trusting that process. And I think the biggest lesson on all of that is that the ancestors are going to continuously test me and my faith.
Yep.
Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in what we're showing you? And do you believe the path that you're walking? And through that stretch, I just had so much clarity of where it was I was supposed to be going and how to do it. There was just anything could have been thrown in my path, and I would be like, nah, I got this, no worries. And I did, I sailed through. We talk about flow space a lot in spirituality. And I think that was probably one of my clearest moments of living in flow space. And it really is. Everything just lands as it's supposed to. And you really, when you're in flow space, you get to see the full working of the universe, like how we're all
Yes.
interconnected, how
Yes.
complete strangers are going to drop on your path and be like, hey, I think you need this, or I think you need to hear this, or let me teach you this. And we're all just constantly handing things to each other because at the end of the day, we're all connected. We come
Hmm.
from the same source. And I really got to see the beauty of that with so much clarity because I'd slowed myself down enough to embrace that flow space and bear witness to the process that was being unfolding in front of me. And probably one of my most beautiful experiences with trusting the ancestors and
Yes.
trusting the process. Mm-mm.
I love it. Yeah, and that sounds like a great experience, and I get it. That's something that I'm doing like just recently, honestly, is learning how to be obedient. Like
Yeah.
without so much, well, wait a minute, what about this? I'm like this, before I was like a rebellious teenager that always was a yeah, but, now I've had so much experience with my ancestors and spirit guides. They've never led me astray. I've taken myself somewhere else to get a lesson, but they've always, been consistent, mainstream and in support of my highest and best. And so now it's like when I get those messages, I trust like right away. Same thing from the universe, but it took some time. It really took some time because I was always battling internally with, oh, well, what if fear, really? Battling
Yeah.
with fear. Fear is such a powerful, energy on the other side of things. So I love how you talked about that. And sometimes those are the best tests of faith, faith in the universe, faith in our ancestors, spirit guides, our abilities and where we have raised, and just the trust of knowing that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And so I love how you walk that walk and it helped you and assist you on another part of your spiritual journey. And so that kind of leads me to the next question, which is, say, for instance, somebody who's not quite as far down the path yet, and they're struggling with things like trust in their intuition, or they feel disconnected from their higher self. How do you help your students to navigate that and begin to start trusting their own internal, signals better?
We'd start with practical things, practical practices. Let's practice using that intuition. And you
Mhm.
start with something simple, like each morning you get up and you make yourself a cup of tea and you intuitively ask yourself, what cup of tea do I want this morning? Do I want the Earl Grey or the peppermint or the chamomile? Like, what am I feeling that I need today? So what we're doing is we're starting our morning with a sense of connection to the self and asking the self,
Mhm.
hey, what do you need today? But we're starting small. We're not leaping straight into the deep end and being like, okay, well, what do you need to do with your life purpose today? It's, hey, what cup of tea do you want today? And you allow your gut to answer that, and we learn to navigate what the gut actually feels like, because the gut, I would imagine, feels different for everybody, and how we interpret our gut is different for everybody. um, I've noticed through experience that there is a connection between what we call gut feels and our serotonin and melatonin levels, which are actually excreted in the gut of the body. So when we're talking about a good feeling, or like a good intuitive feeling, like, oh, this is the right thing, I should be heading down this path, the body releases that bit of serotonin and we feel good about that intuitive decision. So when we're thinking about that cup of Earl Grey tea, we're like, oh, that feels really good in my body. Let's trust that. Okay, and I
Yeah.
don't need the peppermint or the chamomile today. Today it's just the Earl and me. And then on the other side of that, we have the melatonin being released, which is a little bit more of a suppressant. Melatonin is our sleep chemical.
Mhm.
So when things feel a little bit more like there's a downward energy to it, that's more melatonin being released in the body. So we actually have chemical reactions going on in the body when intuition is speaking to us, which I think is cool, that the intuitive aspect of a person speaks through the physical body, it speaks
Mhm.
through the emotional body, the mental body, and understanding how your intuition is actually talking to you and how it works through with these different parts of the body. So is it talking to you through the physical body right now, where it's like, oh, I have a really bad feeling in my whole body, or my body feels really good, or do I have a thought in my head that's saying, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong? We start to learn, okay, our intuition speaks to us more through feelings or
Yes.
thoughts. So, and that's why we start with something simple like, what cup of tea do you need today? And is it more of a thought process that goes on? Is it more of an emotional feeling that's happening? Or is it an actual physical reaction in the body? So we start to navigate our intuition that way. So, simplicity, people think about spirituality and they go straight to the other side and they're like,
Yes.
dump and dive in at the deep end. And then they become overwhelmed. And that also gets into like pushes them off the path because too much information, it's too challenging, it's too this. What cup of tea do you want today? That really is that simple.
I love that. And you're so right on point with that and the simplicity of it. And that's what I've been hearing, like my ancestors really tell me. They're like, make your classes simple for people who are doing the work, who are actively doing the work, but keep it simple. So we're doing things like, how to raise your frequency and how to balance the chakra systems and, meditation, just the basics. But I loved how you talked about just really getting in tune with your intuitive messaging style,
Mm.
because it's going to be different for everybody. And that's that whole experience, spiritual experience part and spiritual journey of the individual walking and tuning into the body. Like for me, yoga in the beginning of my journey was really beneficial for that because it pulled me into my body. It pulled me in tune with breathing, and that's how I started to learn how am I feeling today? Where do I have tension today? I was like completely like disconnected from my body up until yoga. So yoga taught me that ability to go within and start, really internalizing how am I feeling, and to be able to connect with the different aspects of my inner realm. So you're absolutely on point with that. And then also, I think it's a little more complicated today with this mass awakening and this information overload on social media. So you have people who don't know the signals of their intuition. They don't meditate, and then they're thinking about intergalactic federations. And I'm like, whoa, that's like that's way out there somewhere. And like you said, it pushes them off the path, because it will push anybody off the path. First of all, you don't have that connection to your ancestors and spirit guides, and to me, anything like that, I always go to them because they'll let me know, hey, that's not really your path. You don't need to, that doesn't have anything to do with you. Let's stay over here. This is what we do. This is where you're at right now
Yes.
on your journey and your path. And maybe later on that'll make more sense. And your intuition will know if you need to go over there. So I think, like you said, the simplicity of it is going to make it so personal for the individual. And I say that all the time. Don't cheat yourself on the experience and the journey, guys. It's such a beautiful thing,
Yes.
where you start and who you grow to become, and really knowing yourself on that level too, really understanding and knowing, what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So great answer to that. I love it. You also talked about getting into energy healing. That's one of my favorite places to be. So tell me how that started for you and how you're able to incorporate that.
That was a intuitive knowing. It was so strong when I was handed a whole lot of really beautiful information where I was able to teach myself how that all worked. I also had a beautiful supply of crystals. And between the two, the ancestors were like, okay, cool, this is what you need to do now, but you need to incorporate this with the readings that you're doing. So up until that point, tarot was my predominant tool that I worked with. And then when they said, okay, now you're ready to start using those hands and you need to start doing healing and you need to start using the crystals as your tool, I had to trust them. I had to trust them to guide me through my sessions. It was almost like on the job training, if you will. They're like, hey, cool, you're in healer mode now. We're just going to teach you how this all works. So, learning to shut up and be quiet is definitely one of the big lessons because if you can't be quiet and you can't quiet the mind, you're not going to hear what they're saying. So I had to learn to quiet this down in session so that I could get that guidance from them when they're like, okay, you need to use this crystal for this person and you need to place it on this point here. So it was definitely one of the harder on the job trainings that I've done. And like I come from a corporate background originally, and like I've done some on the job trainings on those that were challenging. This was different level altogether.
Yep.
Um, but there's more, it was a more solid form of training than picking up just the book and just doing the theoretical side of things until you're actually there and you're actually practicing. You're not going to fully wrap your head around it. So heading into the realm of doing energy healing was very much a huge intuitive decision for me. It was like this is what you need to do next. And then the big aspect of incorporating that into the readings that I was doing. So essentially, for a lot of people, what I would do is I would actually pull cards for them to understand like what's going on for you today, where are you at right now, what are you needing today, and then based off of that, I would then pull out certain crystals and things that I would need, and then start to go, and then I would then go to work from there. So I've got a bit of insight from the cards, I've got a bit of insight from the client that's in front of me. Now the rest is up to a conversation between me and the ancestors and this person's guides, letting me know exactly what it is that I need to do now. Almost like the finer detail would come from there.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, and I like how you talked about, that's to me the healer journey. I think once you get into energy work and you're working with healing guides is what I call them because it's a whole separate group of them when I'm doing healing work. And it's just like that, like you described. And for me, it was the strongest when I was a massage therapist, and it was the same thing intuitively, like, okay, this is your path now. You're going to start to learn about these different modalities, and then I was able to go to a school that taught like half and half energy work. So it was Reiki, aromatherapy, craniosacral therapy, just a lot of different things. And then, of course, the mechanics of the body and certain pathologies that cause dis-ease. And so I was thrown in it. And then as I started to work on bodies, that's when it really came out. That's when I heard them, okay, now this is what we're going to do. And it was amazing. Like, I really had each session was an opportunity to be able to work with my healing guides very intimately. And it was just like you said, working with not only my healing guides, but the person on the table's healing guides as well. And these people would just be like, oh my God, like what kind of massage is this? This was totally different. Like I feel like an overall sense of well-being. It wasn't just like my muscles and tissues feel great. It was like energetically, things were different. And so when they would come back, I would always be like, they would tell me about all these changes in their life. They're like, oh, I went plant-based and now I'm doing yoga. And I'm like, wow. And so that's how I learned. And I've kept that throughout the years on the different paths of energy healing that I've learned and become initiated in, and got certified for, and encompass it all in one. And so, with that being said, it's kind of like riding a bike. So, anytime I'm about to go into that kind of energy, it's like, okay, I know who's coming with me. I know their style. There has to be that, agreement with the other person's spirit guides, healing guides, and then we get to work. And I love it. Yeah. So definitely, yeah, I think that is an internal calling for anybody who's meant to do that.
Mm.
And I love how you incorporate the crystals, and I miss my crystals. Like, those used to be like, I used to do those in the beginning a lot. And I knew every crystal, their function, and I was just really connected to them on a different level. I don't use them as much as I used to, but yeah, I miss them. So yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this has been a very enlightening conversation. You definitely sound like somebody who is, walking this walk in this path and helping a lot of people out there. So tell me a little bit about your business, how you help people, and like where we can find you on social media and stuff.
So there's the Yogic Tarot side, which at the moment the entire system is built, and I've just started teaching the system online. So that's all freely accessible through the Yogic Tarot website, which is the yogictarot.com. And then my Yogic Tarot YouTube channel has a lot of tutorials. I'm starting to work through each card, explaining the philosophy attached to it, how to practice that card and the pose that comes in. I then also have my freely available Ed app, which has got all my courses on. So everything from learning tarot fully for divination and self-development purposes, or all my mindfulness courses, my intuition development courses are all on there. I've made that all freely accessible because I've been teaching those courses for so many years that I've reaped the rewards of those. And it's like, the world must just have it now. Like, here, take it.
Nice.
Um, and then I've recently gone back into, I've taken a couple of months off. I've been in ancestral training for the last couple of months. It's been rough, but I'm now on the other side of that. And they're like, okay, cool, you can go back to work now.
Good.
So, what that looks like is coming in the form of self development coaching, where all these tools that I've been working with for myself personally and over the years, so things like yoga, tarot, mindfulness, I use all of those tools in sessions to help people find that space of personal growth, to help them find that level of self development they're looking for. Because a lot of people are really struggling to, who am I and how do I fit into this world, and how do I navigate these highly stressful lifestyles that we have? So I help people cultivate a toolbox for themselves that
Mm,
fits who they are and what it is that they're needing so they can achieve those things that they're looking for. And then I do mentoring, and my mentoring is very niche. It's very specifically for people who are born with innate gifts. So, people, if we were 10,000 years ago, they would have been the medicine person in the village. My mentoring is for them specifically because I've walked that path and I know what
mhm.
that path looks like and how hard and lonely that path can be. And there's also a lot of moments where you're just like, what is actually happening right now? Like, I don't understand this. Have I lost my mind? Has the world gone mad? Um, I mean, if I'd had a mentor on my path back in the days, I would be light years ahead of where I am now. But we all walk our path at the speed that we're supposed to walk it at. But if I can assist someone to make that path just that little bit easier or feel less lonely and less isolating, and perhaps even just less confusing, I'm doing my job. Like, that is
Absolutely.
purpose. So yeah, those are the different ways that you can work with me and interact with me.
Okay, great. And so you are on Instagram, and
I'm
where all are you?
I'm on Instagram at the Yogic Tarot at the Yogic Tarot, and then the Tam Dillon, and then on Facebook, same handles as well.
Perfect. Yep. Okay. All right. So you guys heard that. You got to make sure you check out the description so that you can go and follow her. She is definitely well versed in her subjects of healing, and it sounds like you're helping a lot of men and women out there around the world. And like once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking this time out to share your gifts with us, and I will see you on the other side.